My presentation today is all about tenacity. It's a way for you to be able to start to look at words in your life that are really important. And I think that we have, as soon as we get our first slide up here, we're going to work with an acronym today. The acronym is TRIP. And these were 4 words that came from an adventure that I had when I got lost in the Himalayas of Nepal a number of years ago. And as I journaled each day, I started to notice there were 4 words that were paying a lot of, I was paying a lot of attention to, because I was trying to figure out how to find my way back out as I was trekking alone by myself. And we'll get to that story almost near the end of this discussion today. But the words were tenacity, resilience, imagination, and purpose. And what this talk today is going to be about is how important our words are, especially those words that are internal, those words that we talk to ourselves about, the negative thoughts, the negative things that are going on. And especially right now, as we're all faced with COVID and some riots around the country and all kinds of things happening with the stock market and interest rates, and everything is sort of in a state of flux. And so the kind of words we use on a daily basis impact our personal emotional behavior. And so we're going to dive into how words are looked upon throughout time. This quote from Lao Tzu means so much to me because it really does nail it down. I'm going to quickly read it for you. Watch your thoughts because they become words. Watch your words because they become actions. Watch your actions because they become habit. Watch your habits, they become character. Watch your character, it becomes your destiny. It's a very powerful way to look at how our words, actions, habits all affect us at a deep level. There's words that come at us from all different angles. We hear them in Facebook and Twitter, internet, and emails and whatnot, and a lot of them are words we haven't ever used before, words that suddenly are into our daily repertoire, and we're having to educate ourselves. No matter what age you are, you have to keep up with what's going on, and it's moving at such a fast speed right now that I think a lot of people get stressed out over how fast things are changing, and that they're not able to change with them quickly. Today, we've got life crisis going on with everybody in the country at some level. And we have to be very cognizant of that fact when we're working with our clients, our team, our families. So it's a way to be able to look at how we handle our behavior. You may have life crisis that'll happen at work or at home. You suddenly feel like you need to escape or take an adventure. I mean, wasn't that the case for all of us in March and April? I mean, we really wanted to be able to just get out of Dodge and go and get away from our problems for a few days, and we couldn't. Everything was closed. And because of all that, you find yourself sad or afraid and learning how to cope with all that's going on. Well, we've been given character traits to help us with all of this. We were born with them. It's inherent in how we look at life and how we look at the challenges that we're faced with. An awful lot of this boils down to, for me, what I titled my book about when I got lost in Nepal. I titled it Tenacity, because tenacity is all about spirit and adventure and vision. And coming out of COVID just to the little bit where we are today, where the country's starting to get back to work well, the unemployment rate's dropping, the stock market has regained some of its losses, we've got to incorporate tenacity into our daily lives. Most of the important things in the world that have been accomplished by people who have kept on trying when there seemed to be no hope at all. I mean, Dale Carnegie's name has been a household name for decades. And for him to be able to make this kind of quote, really, it meant a lot to me when I first read it, because there were times, I'm sure, in America over the last 6 months where a lot of people who did not have income, who did not have health insurance, had no hope at all, and they were really struggling. So I'd like to share a little story with you about how tenacity came into my life a few years ago. I don't know how many of you are bicyclists. I began riding my bicycle on a lot of the fun rides around Colorado, like the Courage Classic and the Tour de Colorado and the Ride the Rockies back in the early 90s. And in 2002, I stopped to get some water at a gas station one day and ran into a guy that had a great jersey on. I said, wow, where'd you get that jersey? And he said, well, it's part of my club. We're the Cobras. We're an over 50 group out of Southwest Littleton. And so I joined like right away because I was so bored for riding long distances for the sake of long distances. And one of the events that they had on their calendar each year was the Colorado Senior Games. It was a grueling 2-day event where you had 2 road races and 2 time trials in 2 days. Each day had a road race and a time trial. So I arrived the first morning of 14 years ago, and I was ready and raring to go. I was in shape. I knew what I was doing, and man, I didn't place at all. And for the next 14 years, I would maybe be 4th or 5th in the time trial, and maybe 5th or 6th or 10th, and sometimes even lower than that in the road races. But year after year after year, I would continue to raise my training in the wintertime so that when the spring rolled around and the senior games came, I was ready. Well, just a couple of years ago, I showed up on a Saturday morning. I rode the time trial and I didn't place very well. I did 9th, I think. And then the road race came in the afternoon. And the road race normally has between 25 and 30 guys in it. And it's all in a big peloton, a big group of riders all going out together. The first race on Saturday, the first road race, is a 20K, so it's 12 miles. You ride out to a pylon 6 miles away, you turn around and you come back. And you finish right where you started. The road race oftentimes is pretty easy in the first half. You're just trying to keep up, stay in the peloton, watch everybody, see how they ride. At the pylon, you turn and you start to head back. And at that point in time, the guys that are in front, who are the faster racers, they really try to take off fast so that they can thin the pack out and drop a bunch of people that they don't want to have near the finish line. I was able to stay in the peloton. I thought, wow, I'm doing well. I better start looking at the guys that are near the front. I know that there's 3 or 4 of them that'll be in the top 5. I'll try and get on one of their wheels and I'll try and finish as best I can. And maybe today's my day. Maybe I can actually beat this and place and make podium today. So we're on our way back. I take my turn at the front like this guy is in the blue jersey here with the white helmet. Everybody gets a turn at the front. Everybody has to pull. You break the wind for everyone behind you and they get to rest. You only stay there for about 30 seconds. You drop off and you go back into the peloton and the next guy takes over. Well, I did that and I was in the middle of the pack. I was pretty winded after doing it, but we were approaching the finish line maybe a quarter of a mile away, and I started working my way up through the peloton to get behind the wheel of some of these guys that I thought might finish pretty well. I figured if I could stay behind them, I could pull along with them and stay in their draft and maybe I'd have a chance. And I did that, and we got to the 200-meter mark where the road opened up and we could ride on both sides of the road and headed towards the finish line, and all you could hear was the roar of the tires, the clicking of the gears, guys huffing and puffing. Some of them are standing up and throwing their bikes from side to side. Others are seated with a really high cadence. And I'm looking around and I'm going, holy cow, I'm in 5th spot. This is great. And I've got 2 guys in front of me. I know I can draft on them and then pull out and pass them, which I did. And suddenly I was in 3rd place. And then I heard it. There was a guy that was riding on my tail right behind me. And he suddenly pulled up and he passed me right at the finish line and he got me by half a bike. 3rd place, poof, gone. 14 years of trying was going to turn into 15. I had one more day to try and do things. So I went home that night and I was pretty dejected. I felt pretty awful. It's hard when you've worked that hard all spring to get to the point where you can do this, and especially to be in 3rd place and then lose it by half a bike length. It was just so deflating. But what I learned through all this was that the ability to talk to ourselves and talk ourselves out of a funk is a great life skill to learn. And our tenacity is one of our best allies in these situations. When I started getting into the funk and started feeling depressed and was having to put my bike together, get everything ready for the next day, I had 0 energy. And then my tenacity hit and I started to think more tenacious thoughts. I knew that I had performed well today. I knew that I had one more day. I had 2 more chances, a time trial and a road race. So I built myself back up and I arrived Sunday morning. And the time trial is the first race. It was a 5K, which is really short, so you've got to be able to warm up a lot in the parking lot beforehand. I knew that if I could average 22 miles an hour, that I would do pretty well. Had to go down to a pylon and turn and come back, but it was downhill going down, and it was slightly uphill coming back. So as soon as I started at the start line, I went through all my gears. I got into my aero bars. I'm making myself as small going through the wind as I possibly can. And I looked down at my computer, and I've gotten up to 30 miles an hour. I had to hit 31 or 32 before the pylon to keep my average high enough. So I really pushed it hard. I braked late. I turned the pylon. I started to head back up towards the finish line. And I looked down, and sure enough, I had hit 31 miles an hour. I thought, great, this is perfect. I may be able to hold on to 22 miles an hour on the way back as an average. I looked down, and the grass is blowing along with me. I got a little bit of a tailwind, and I thought, good, I've got a tailwind. No, everybody's going to get a tailwind. I've got to push hard. But as you're going back uphill, you slowly go slower and slower and slower. And I watched my average speed drop down to 27 and 26 and 25, and I'm gearing down, going into lower gears as I'm slowing down. I get near the finish line, I'm huffing and puffing. I look, and my heart rate's already at 180, which is way over my maximum. And I pushed as hard as I could as I crossed the finish line, and I hit exactly 22 miles an hour as my average. So I went back to the parking lot, and I sat and with the rest of my team, and we were cooling down, waiting for them to post the results. And one of the fellows came over that had been a fellow racer for a long time, and he stuck his hand out. He said, "Congratulations, dude." I said, "Really? Why?" He said, "You got third place." And I just standing here now, I got chills again. I got goosebumps. It's just a bike race, right? It's a small thing in the overall scheme of things, especially in COVID. But look at the smile on my face. I'm the guy on the right in Cobra's jersey. The other two riders who win all the time, yeah, oh hum, we won, big deal. But I was so excited. In fact, they walked off of the podium and left me, and I just stayed there on the third place because I had a bunch of my friends continue to take pictures of them. This was one of the highlights of my weekend, obviously. And it was one of those things that helped me develop my tenacity creed. And I think that you'll find that they really apply to a lot of things that we do in insurance, financial planning, working with our clients, is that you've got to admit what you want. And if you want a successful agency or a successful practice, you've got to be able to admit what you want and how you want it, where you're going to go. And you got to be willing to work for it. I joined New York Life in 1975, and I'm still selling Medicare just as a part-time basis because I've really fallen in love with public speaking. But I really enjoy still doing some insurance work, but you've got to be able to be working for the long haul. The idea is to know that there's going to be disappointment along the way. We're going to have peaks and valleys, aren't we? Business is going to go up, business is going to go down, all kinds of things are going to affect you, but you got to do it anyway. You're there, you're planning, you're working all the time. You've got to be able to make sure that your team has this kind of feeling about everything. And then you've got to repeat it. I have this on the wall in my office. I've had it there for a long time because it's one of those things that once I look at it, it kind of brings my tenacity up a little bit. I become a little more tenacious, a little more cocky. I'm ready to dive in and do what I need to do on a daily basis. Louis Pasteur, the famous scientist, said, "Let me tell you the secret that has led me to my goals. My strength lies solely in my tenacity." I mean, this is the kind of quote that when I see it, it's just like, wow, here's a man who was so famous in his time and still well known for what he did. And tenacity was in his vocabulary. How cool is that? So let's take a poll, Keith. What do you got?
My absolute pleasure. We've got the poll broken down into two. Here comes the first one. And what I'd like for you all to do is to click on here and let us know, how many years have you been in the financial services industry? A little over halfway through. There's people who've been doing this for a long time, Keith. All right, let's go ahead and publish our first poll.
Okay.
There's your results for you, Keith. It's we've got on average the highest levels between 11 and 20 years. People that have been in the financial services industry. And then you want to speak to that a little bit, Keith?
Yeah, This is exactly what I expected, and knowing a lot of people that are in this crowd to begin with. This tells me where you are in your business and the kinds of things that you've already learned how to plan and how you've been able to pull your business along, how you've gone through training after training. I mean, that's one thing we've got constantly, isn't it? Continuing education. It's always there. Do we have a second poll, Keith?
We do have a second poll, Keith, and here's up for everybody. We'd like to know how many employees or assistants do you have in your employ? This is not surprising for you and I, Keith. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and then do this as a post. Is a lot of solopreneurs out there, Keith. A lot of people just out there doing it by themselves. What advice do we have for them?
Well, they already know. They got to get up every morning. They got to fire themselves up. They've got to be able to motivate themselves and get out the door. And it's all about how the planning takes place. Whether you've got a staff or not, you still have to get the work done. And you know exactly what it is. Those amount of years you've all been at it now, you've got a system down. And your system is working well for you. You're coming out of COVID now. Your companies are probably helping you a lot. There's probably a lot of online applications taking place, a lot of online questionnaires and interviews that you're able to do now where you don't have to meet with people in person. There's even ways that you can be able to get a lot of things ordered, like x-rays and blood and everything else. There's just a lot that can be done in that kind of environment. Well, congratulations to all of you for those kinds of years, without a doubt. Being the solopreneur, though, it's what we all have done through all of our careers. You have to start somewhere. And speaking of starting somewhere, you have to learn. Got to go back one. Well, you gotta look to when you have the talk with your clients. No, I'm not talking about the one that your mom and dad took you down by the creek and had with you. I'm talking about the talk that you had with your client when you first hired them. That's what this speech is all about today, is how we can incorporate the talk about words. The words that you want them to use internally and with you that will help you get them where they want to go. Because this is all about your goals. Your client has goals for the retirement home, the retirement house. Maybe they want a second home in Phoenix if they're wanting to be a snowbird. Maybe they want to go to Antarctica. Who knows what their goals are? But whatever they are, you need to be able to have the talk about what happens when we suddenly get a COVID. Nobody in December, when I was on my cruise, planned to come home and be in lockdown 2 months later. When you think about that, we just were blindsided in February and March. And it was one of those things that we all look at and go, holy cow, we survived it. We're here now. But man, how did you end up talking with your clients during that period of time? Had you already had the talk about how they needed to have good words in their vocabulary? Because when the market drops and the bottom falls out, a lot of people's incomes disappeared. A lot of people's jobs disappeared. How did you handle that? Did you have it already talked? Did you already have that talk with them? Did they know how to be tenacious and resilient in the rock and roll times of the stock market? Did they have a time planned for with their emergency fund where they were going to be able to take care of those insurance premiums on their car, on their house, their disability income, especially one of the most important ones? How did you have that talk in advance, or did you have it? Well, this is all about having that talk, making sure that they know what they're supposed to do and how they're supposed to react. Because reactions are all about their actions, isn't it? If their actions are bad, they're going to be in trouble. Bailey and I both have a friend who sold everything in February or March because he saw that the stock market was going down and he was afraid it was never coming back up. You never lose till you sell it. But I wish I could have helped him, but he was already out of the game. This is the kind of talk that we need to be able to learn how to have with our clients in advance. And it's one of those things where once you have it, then reviewing it later on is easier. And that's what the TRIP system is all about. Learning how you can use tenacity, resilience, imagination, and purpose all within their planning so that they understand when you call them during a crisis like we're having now, those 4 words will mean something to them. They will suddenly understand where we're going and how to get there. Carl Becklenburg's a buddy of mine. I've known him for I don't know, about 6 years now. And he obviously is a Hall of Famer. I asked him if he would give me a few good words about tenacity, and here's what he had to say.
Hi, I'm Carl Mecklenburg, Ring of Fame Denver Bronco. In this presentation, Keith was talking about tenacity, and there is nothing more valuable in the NFL than tenacity. If you can't give full effort every single play, every single day, there's really no place for you there. It's the same thing in business. You got to put in the work, you got to do the preparation, and then you got to perform when it's time to perform.
He's got it right. He's got it nailed. It's just one of those things where once you learn how to work the playbook, you got to show up and you got to do it. I don't know how the NFL is going to react to COVID. We don't know what the games are going to look like. It's going to be really interesting to see where we go from here. But with tenacity, we kind of wrap this up on tenacity. You got to share your enthusiasm and your energy and new ideas and vision with your staff and your clients. During COVID, we've got to dig deep and find new ways to do old things because the old ways don't cut it anymore. We've got to help people find the adventure in their daily life and expand their understanding of their products and their investments. There is an adventure to all of this. And if we look at it as an adventure, then suddenly it's not as painful because you know you're going to come out the other end of it. When I got lost in the Himalayas, I knew I would get out of the problem. I just didn't know how. And I knew that I just had to keep my calm and journal and meditate each day and work my way towards it. And you have to bring your own unique brand of spirit to your clients. Each of you are an individual that they purchased. Granted, they bought the products of whatever company you work for, but you're the person that they really love to work with. They like to be able to talk with you about whatever problem they've got with their life insurance, their health insurance. Granted, problems are never fun for people, but knowing that you're there, that you're solid as a rock, you've been there, and it shows with the poll that we did, that you're there, you've got experience, you know how to handle them. They look to you for that advice. And tenacity can help you make that happen with them and give them that sense of adventure. Okay, Keith. So resilience is our next word. It's all about the action. Resilience is a lot of fun because behavior can fall into different categories, can't it? We can have lots of fear, we can have confusion, and we can have impatience from our clients. And those are pretty normal kinds of things, even in an average kind of day, not to mention times like we're in now. But if you flip that with what we're talking about here today, you suddenly have, go ahead, Keith. If you have had the talk, they're informed. They know what you're talking about. They know that you're going to bring something creative to the table, or you're going to brainstorm with them to be able to make something happen. And what are they then? Suddenly they're empowered. They're ready to feel good about planning again. They're feeling good about you being their advisor and doing what needs to be done. This is not an easy job. You've got to be really on your toes with your education, with what's going on in the marketplace. You've got to be able to understand the behavior of the client and how to be able to handle their reactions. You handle a lot. You wear a lot of hats in this business, and it's not going to ever be easy. But resilience has a wonderful bounce factor built into it. Once we hit bottom, like we have kind of done here during the summer, there's this bounce that starts to take place and things start to go back the other direction. And when I first started in New York Life in 1975, I signed a 3-year contract, and that contract was called a probationary contract. I had to produce enough each month to meet the stipend that they were paying me each month. So if they were giving me $1,000 a month, then I had to earn that much in commissions each month. And back in 1975, that was a lot of money because your commissions were pretty low because the premiums were still pretty low. And I had to go out each month. Well, if I didn't make my goal each month and satisfy that in sales, then my general manager would come down and he would say, okay, I've got to have you sign what's known as a termination agreement. A termination agreement tells you that if you don't produce what you owe for last month and make it for the next month, you're terminated. Well, I got used to this each month because it was sort of like a challenge. Resilience was one of those things that I hit bottom at the end of the month when he brought that form into me, and I had to bounce back and find the energy to go sell to the lady at the grocery store, or try and get my uncle to buy another policy. There was all kinds of things that I would try and do during my first 3 years, as we all do and did. But at the end of the month, I would hear those footsteps coming down the hallway, and it would get me angry because I knew I hadn't made it. He'd lay the form on my desk and walk to the next guy because I wasn't always the only one getting them. Well, over the 3 years, the 36 months of my probationary contract, I was terminated 33 times out of 36 months. I did have resilience. I learned how to use my tenacity and my resilience to bounce back and to make things happen because I knew this industry would be really good for me in the long run, and I had to find a way to be able to make it. And it played out, obviously, over the years, and I retired from New York Life in 2001. With resilience, we've got all kinds of things happening. We've got a way for us to be able to re-energize ourselves as time goes along. And if you'll put in the chat, Bailey, you'll read back to me some answers here. How do you re-energize when you've hit bottom? It doesn't have to be just COVID related. We all have ups and downs in our lives, both our personal lives and our business lives. Put in the chat, for me, I go out on my bicycle. I was actually riding my bike in February before they closed the ski resorts. I volunteer up at Winter Park, and so I was still skiing until the middle of March, until they closed it up. But I was riding my bike because there were races that were happening early in the spring. Keith, Bailey, we got any answers?
Absolutely. Taking a break from all the technology and getting outside. My mother always called it getting some fresh air on the brain, getting a workout, connecting with nature, walking in the mountains, going for walks. I think Einstein, thought of the theory of relativity while riding his bike. But there is, I'd like to ask Steve, where'd you go, Steve? Steve Caldera, you had a question for Keith. You had your hand raised. If you want to drop into the chat box and let us know what it is that is your question, I'd love to read that off to Keith. And then Lauren Miller is of the same cloth as you, Mr. Renison. Ride my road bike. Fresh air workouts is definitely it. We've got definitely a theme going here.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I've got a couple of friends that own bike shops, and I'll tell you, they were sold out by April. Everybody, it seemed like, wanted to buy a bike and hit the bike paths.
And I've got one last one from Neil Marks that really hits home. He makes a list of gratitudes to remind him that the bad thing isn't everything and to look for the good side of things.
Couldn't have said it better. That's beautiful. Yes, gratitude's everything. And we're actually going to touch base on that when we get to purpose. Okay, what's our next one here, Keith? Being grateful is a good start. It helps you see that things aren't as bad as you think. So we were thinking along the same lines, weren't we? Go ahead and go to the next one. Put in the chat, list a few things that you're grateful for. I'm grateful for my son. He's been so good to me during all of this, and I love him dearly. We have a lot of fun together, and it was really great to be able to connect with him. He's 26, and we just have a ball. So family was one of the things that I'm really grateful for. What kind of stuff are you getting, Bailey?
Yeah, this is being echoed right here. Family, health, family, friends, dogs. For me, I'm thankful that I have a great partner in life who has a very, very steady job that makes things a little bit easier. Kids, parents, husbands, and health is definitely a big one that's being spoken to here, Keith.
Good. Well, it sounds like everybody's got their grateful on. That's great. Let's go ahead and move on. So preparing for this keynote today, I got to do 3 interviews with some of your members. And I had some really interesting conversation. And we're going to get Kathleen Owings on the screen here in a minute. And Kathleen's going to share with you the day that I called her. She's going to kind of tell you what she was doing and where she was and why. So Kathleen, have you found her yet?
Oh yeah.
There she is.
Hi, Keith.
Hi. So
Hi.
Let everybody know what you and I chatted about that day.
So that day, actually, when I called you, I was sitting in my car taking a break from my house. So I'm now working out of my house. I've been working out of my house since COVID started full time. And there's 5 of us on our team in various locations. And sometimes I just need to leave my house. I have a lovely home, by the way. It's beautiful, but I need a break in the environment because I'm doing laundry here. I'm getting up, I'm preparing meals, I'm working. It's kind of this nonstop reel in my mind, if you will, of non-changing environment.
Yeah, the word was overwhelmed, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, because you think you can always do more. You know, I get up, I check emails real quick and go have breakfast, then come back to work. I'm like, oh, I could just do one more thing, just one more. And then the end of the day, I started to learn by actually closing my door. I used to keep the door open. Now I actually close it. And for me, that's like, okay, business has been locked, door is closed. Don't do one more thing. One more thing all the time.
I think you also mentioned that you were eating Chick-fil-A.
I was like, okay, I need a break. Look, I'm mostly plant-based. I'll be honest with you. Some people are probably chuckling. I'm like, I just need a break. I need a break.
Yeah, and our car kind of became a refuge. It was the same thing for me. Because I'm single, divorced, my son is living with his girlfriend. I had one of those things where I would just hop in the car and go for a ride. You know, it was snowing, whatever. I just go for a drive. I needed to get out for a while. It was just crazy. So moving along, what do we got next, Steve? Imagination, the fun part. This is where what I really enjoy about this talk is rediscovering that childlike quality. I think we all would agree that imagination is one of those things that we lost once we were grown up. And we kind of lived in our imagination as children. And I imagine a lot of you that are in the audience today can relate that maybe you have a child that has such a good imagination that they have a imaginary playmate, and they play with them all day long and they talk to them and they have so much fun. We use our imagination less as we age, and that's sad. We really need to get back to those kinds of roots where we have fun with our imagination and have it be creative in a way that we can really enjoy and bring the adventure back to our lives again. So finding a way to dream more and use your imagination is really important in talking with your clients, because if they focus on the negatives, they're only going to see negative things all the time. I had a talk with my son yesterday. He said, I've got to stop watching the news. He said, I watch it and then suddenly I'm fearful all evening. He said, I wonder if we're going to have a riot in my neighborhood, or if the economy is going to get worse and we're going to go back into lockdown. We've got to be able to look at the good and imagine the good and imagine the fun things that we can do and still plan our lives and do things with it. I had a little short course I took recently on emotional intelligence, and I had to be able to journal for 2 weeks about the interactions that I had with people. Well, there were no interactions to have. It was crazy. So what I used was a place to be able to see people was on Zoom calls. Bailey and I are both in the National Speakers Association, and we had lots of training exercises over Zoom in the early days of COVID. And those were filled with fulfillment and fun for me, because I was able to see my friends and converse with them, and we would learn together. And it was just a riot. We had a lot of fun, and it felt like community again. And I didn't feel like I was here at home alone. And then there was drivers in traffic. I mean, I told you I went out and just would go for a ride. That ended up just almost being more frustrating than anything else, except for the guy that would pull up next to me. He's got a baseball cap, dark glasses, a mask, and blue gloves on. And he's by himself in his car, and I'm going, all right, is he headed to go rob a convenience store? Or, remember when you couldn't walk into a bank with a cap and sunglasses on? Now they have no choice. But drivers in traffic are always going to be a little frustrating, but I've learned to look for the humor in it. That was how I thought it was be the way I could reframe it. Grocery store clerks became my best friends. I probably spent more money on groceries during COVID than I have any other time in my life, because that was where I could go play with somebody. I'm a personable guy. I like to play. I like to tease and have fun and banter back and forth with people. And so I'd get to the checkers, and I would compliment them profusely on their scanning abilities, how fast they were at getting stuff scanned. And then there was the sacker who was putting everything in. I was getting cans on eggs and everything else. You got to laugh about it. You got to have some fun. And then I learned to be able to take care of that credit card machine without touching anything. I mean, it was all things. It was fulfillment, it was freedom, and it was fun, without a doubt. But grocery store clerks probably turned out to be my favorite place to be. Calls to CenturyLink are always frustrating. I'm like today here, I tried to up my internet speed so that I could be on calls like this and do keynotes without breaking up a lot. Well, you get the first person who asks you a checklist of things, and they always ask, have you turned your modem off? Have you restarted your computer? Da, 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 da. Then they say, well, let's transfer you up the line to a techie. And what do they ask you? Have you turned your modem off? Have you started your computer? It's the same questionnaire. So you get to the fourth guy, and then finally you've got a techie who says, oh, you just need to do this, and I'll up your speed. I mean, why couldn't they do that with the first person? There was no way to get past the frustration with CenturyLink. So it was one of those things where I just had to let go of it. On the other hand, one of my hobbies is building websites. I build them for my friends, and I could call GoDaddy with a problem, and sometimes I called them just for the fun of it because they were techies like me, and they're just nerd as hell. And they're one of those things where they just want to talk to another nerd. So it was fulfillment, freedom, and fun across the board. So I found that a way to be able to emotionally relate to people was how I did here, was to take the time to actually examine it and then move forward. I love this. This is kind of, we ought to put this on CenturyLink's website. How many of you got number threes? I think there's a lot of people would probably say that there was a while there where we had a lot of people giving us number three. There were hotheads about couldn't pay their insurance, needed a discount, needed to cancel something, claims weren't getting paid because people were off work, blah, blah, blah. It was just all kinds of stuff taking place without a doubt. Tamara Kleinberg Gandor is one of my friends in the National Speakers Association, and she's all about imagination because her business is all about innovation. Go for it, Keith.
Mara here, innovation enabler and founder of Launch Street. I am honored to be here with my friend Keith Remison to talk about the best system I've seen for personal success, TRIP, specifically the I, which stands for imagination. Imagination is the act of forming new ideas. It's the ability of the mind to think differently. The reality is that the fast-paced, constant disruption world that we live in means that what made us successful yesterday will make you obsolete tomorrow. In fact, we aren't even solving yesterday's challenges anymore. So we can't rely on yesterday's thinking to solve tomorrow's challenges or go after tomorrow's opportunity. We need to tap the power of our imagination and come up with new ways of seeing those challenges and opportunities. Create never been done ideas. That's how you win in today's crazy world that we live in. Imagination is like your superpower. It's there inside of you. And if you unlock your imagination, you'll find your path, your possibilities, and the success you seek. Thanks for asking me to share, Keith.
Tamara is a fabulous presenter, and her company, Launch Street, really helps a lot of people be innovative and find things that they want to be able to cover. Harry Truman had this really wonderful quote. He had a terrible presidency. His was so difficult at the end of World War II in Korea. America was not built on fear. America was built on courage and on imagination and an unbeatable determination to get the job, to do the job at hand. Isn't that really how we have to view what we do in this industry? We have to have that unbeatable determination to just keep pushing forward to be of service to our clients. Being of service is really what our job is all about. So the second person I got to interview was Turja Whitmore, who is a CLU, and Turja will give us some help here as to what he does when he got really frustrated. He would go to his property in the mountains and he would do something very special. Turja, tell us about it.
Yeah, Keith, I apologize. I am not seeing Turja in our audience at this time. Turja, if you're there, if you wouldn't mind raising your hand, and I can, or if you're in our panel, unmute yourself and turn your camera on. But I unfortunately do not see Turja here right now.
Okay. If he happens to come back on later, let us know and we'll come back to his interview.
Yes, sir.
So with imagination, we've got some wrap up on it that I think will probably help you see where you can implement some of it. Finding the adventure in your client's goals and using your imagination to help them step outside of their comfort zone. Isn't that really what it's all about sometimes? They want to take your advice, but sometimes they don't want to implement it. How many times have you given a client advice and they didn't do what you told them to do, and then they regretted it later? That's what imagination in conjunction with adventure does for clients. If we can have them see the quality of the adventure of their life and use imagination to solve the goals and whatever things are outside their comfort zone, it really helps them be able to see where they're going, and they know that they've got you there to talk to. It's so important to have that advisor that they know they can pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I'm really bugged about this. I don't know what to do or how to think about it. I had a client for a young man. I met him when he was 14 years old, and I had him through his 30s. And he would call me at different stages of his life about different things that were happening to him because he and his father didn't have a very good what's the word I'm searching for, Keith?
Relationship is the word.
I couldn't think of relationship. Well, he stayed with me for so long, and then he moved out of state. But while he was here, he would call me for all kinds of things. He was buying his first car, buying his first house, dating his first girl, who he ended up marrying, which was wonderful. But that's the kind of client you want to be able to advise, and that's the kind of people you want to have that will repeat and will continuously come back to you for advice. So you got to stick with it. Goals are what give you reasons to work and advise. They energize what I call your energy attraction. The more you can work and advise with people, the more energy they get, the more energized that they become. And that attracts more energy. Have you ever noticed that when you're in your office some days and you're kind of bored, you don't have a lot of calls to make, you don't have a lot of things to do, and then somebody walks in the door and says, hey, you want to go to the range and shoot your gun, or do you want to go play a game of tennis? Suddenly, you got all kinds of energy. Well, where did it come from? Well, you attracted it with something that really made you feel good about what you were going to go do. Do the same thing with your clients. You got to flip it. You got to pull them out of the negative and put them in the positive and help them attract energy that will move them forward. The universe loves immediate action. As soon as you have an idea, even if it's about a client that you've been thinking about for a week to contact for a review or something, call them right away. Don't put it on your list for tomorrow. Call it right away, because as soon as you take action on something that popped into your head, there's just something about the energy that flows with that. It's got good juju, and boy, you take off and you run and you've got a lot of things to happen that will come out that will be good for you. So as soon as you've got something that you want to do, dive right in on it. Make it happen as quickly as you possibly can. Poll number 2, Keith.
Here is our second poll, and it's how could you use imagination and brainstorm with your clients during COVID? We've got a couple options for you. If you've got things that you're already doing that are not on this list, we would love to have you place those into the chat box for us to be able to share it with everybody else. And for everybody there, if you guys can, on your screen, we only have a couple people that have voted, so I'll leave it up for a few minutes. Right, here come more votes coming in. Kathleen Owens says, eat the frog. I've been doing bomb videos.
Bomb videos can be fun, no doubt.
Absolutely. Nice. We're a little over halfway with people participating in this poll. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll for us, Keith, and I'm going to share the results with you. And it's pretty overwhelming setting up reviews using Zoom or another platform over the phone. And,
wow, look at that. That's amazing. I didn't expect it to be that high.
Yeah. And Steve Caldera in the chat box dropped in, I just hide from people.
Go get him, Steve. When they're all chasing you, what can you do, right? You gotta take off. Well, that tells us right there that everything has moved into a virtual world. And we had to learn a whole new set of skills, didn't we? And we've done it. I mean, you got to congratulate yourselves on these kinds of things. The successes that you have overcome, the problems you've overcome and the successes that you've had because of it are wonderful. You've been in the business between 11 and 20 years, and that shows right there that you had the experience to pivot. I kind of got to where I hated that word during COVID, but it really still does apply a lot. Okay, let's move on to the next one, Peter. And that's purpose. Purpose pulls everything together in so many different ways. And we've got just a little over 10 minutes left. We're going to be able to wrap up on time here and do just fine. So purpose is one of those things that it means different things to different people. And it helps you understand yourself and to gain wisdom. Think about that statement for a second. Yeah, we're going to get a little philosophical here. I can't help it. That's what I studied in college. I was a nerd studying philosophy. Boy, anyway. It helps you plan and execute with clarity. When you understand who you are and what your wisdom is, you gain clarity. You then can plan and execute for yourself, your family, your office, and your clients with clarity. It opens up all kinds of things to be able to do that you can see so clearly that it's easily completed. And it moves us outside of ourselves sometimes. I have a lot of different kinds of purpose in my life. I really enjoy volunteering, and I volunteer for the National Speakers Association. I've put on bike rides for the American Cancer Society. I belonged to a car club for a long time, and I put on events there. It gets us outside of ourselves so we're not so narrowly focused all the time on just us. When you can broaden that and you can be focused on other people and other things, suddenly life is a whole lot more worth living. So let me tell you about my search of purpose, and it's going to be my story from Nepal. I had gone to Nepal once before and climbed in the world, and I had learned that I had lots of curiosity about everything that was in the world. And I'd been there once before. And it was one of those things where if I was going to go again, it would I would try and make the whole purpose of it going to find my purpose again, to find my passion. I had started to wane a little bit in my business. I was looking for other things to do a lot. I needed that grand adventure. So I did. I took off by myself and went to Nepal. And Keith's going to hover the cursor over Nepal, which is right above India, a little, there it is right there. It's a little orange box right there in the middle. It took me 26 hours to get there back in those days. And when I landed in Kathmandu, I found out that they had 8 feet of snow at Everest. I was going to trek to Everest Base Camp, which sits at 19,000. And I knew that I could do that by myself because there's tea houses at the end of each day. And so I decided I would take off and I would go. And I landed and I found out they'd had all this snow and they canceled my permit. I couldn't go to Everest because they were having a ton of avalanches. And you can see the third diamond from the right is Everest. And I knew that I could go there without any trouble, but the snow threw a monkey wrench in the works. So I ended up going to the last diamond to the right, which is a mountain called Kanchenjunga. I love the names of their mountains. It's a fun one to say. So my first trip, I really enjoyed because I went to Annapurna Sanctuary, which is the second diamond to the left, from the left. Annapurna is a horseshoe-shaped sanctuary, they call it, of 6 28,000-foot peaks in a horseshoe. And go ahead and go to the next one. Did we lock up, Keith? Hello? There we go.
I lost my mouse for a second there. Back to you, my friend.
You need to clean those mouse traps out of your office. So this was a mountain called Pinchuli. Sits at 27,000 feet in the Annapurna Sanctuary. And this photo became the cover of my book. And it was one of those places where when we trekked around the other side of it, then it got up to almost 18,000. This is where the Annapurna base camp is. And it was so serene and so quiet because as you can see, there was nobody there. The day that I arrived with the woman that I was traveling with, her and myself and 2 other people that were there when we got there in the morning. By the afternoon, there was a few more that showed up. But the mountains are spectacular. Well, on my second trip, because of the avalanches, I had to go to the eastern part of the country and I had to go through jungle to be able to get to the mountain that I wanted to go to. And I got lost at the end of my first day. And there was this couple that was along the side of the path. And I said, the little boy that you see there in the bottom right spoke a little bit of English. And I asked him, I said, can I spend the night at your house because I have no place to stay? And sure enough, they put me up for the evening. They fed me and they gave me a place to sleep next to a water buffalo. He'd spread a lot of hay down next to the water buffalo. And he said, you can sleep here. He's very warm, which was, what a way to look at a bull. But anyway, as I crawled into my sleeping bag that night, I knew that I really was having the adventure of a lifetime and that I really needed to be able to appreciate and have gratitude for what I was experiencing. Here's the bull. He was smelly, he was big, but he didn't seem to mind me sleeping next to him. So it worked out all right. So living with purpose for you and your clients encompasses different things. You need to consider adding journaling and meditation to your day, both you, your staff, your clients. Journaling helps you keep track of what you're thinking about and the things that are still important. Meditation calms your mind, brings you to that place where you're able to gain clarity and move through any problems you might have. Practice the art of being present and quiet in the moment. For many years in my insurance office, I would close the door to my office and I would tell my secretary, I'm going to be gone for 20 minutes. I'm going to close my eyes. And I did that for many years because I oftentimes had evening appointments. And this was a way for me to be able to re-energize. Meditation will do that for you. Taking 10 minutes, 20 minutes to block out the mind chatter, allow yourself to hear your own thoughts more clearly or to clear your mind so that it's just quiet is ideal. Journaling is it's a practice, it's a learned art. Once you start, writing about your day, writing about your goals, it will expand and you'll be able to really be able to use it in conjunction with meditating. I would oftentimes journal and then meditate, and then I would be really relaxed once that was over with, and I could move on with the rest of my day. Is Kate here?
She is here, and Kate, I am going to allow you to talk. So if you'd like to unmute yourself, by all means, I'd love to hear from you.
Let's see.
There you go.
Hi, Kate.
Okay. Hi.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. Do we have her video? If not, we can do it without.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if I have it or not.
Bottom left-hand corner, it says stop
Oh.
video.
It just gives me audio information.
I think we just have her on audio today.
Okay, that's cool. We'll move forward because we've only got 4 minutes left. Kate, tell us about what you shared with me that I found so inspirational about what you were doing with your children in homeschooling.
Well, as a working parent, it's been a little bit difficult to navigate the online learning and having a family and having a business. So what I did was we really carved out different spaces for the children. We're lucky enough that we have an office that's small enough where we could have both of the children here sometimes, or just one of them, so that they could really have a workspace to do their schoolwork. And then at home was going to be a little bit more fun time where we could watch movies, do crafts, and hang out and play. So we're trying to just manage it all, but really trying to keep the kids' mental health in mind and make sure that we're doing everything that we can for them.
It's so hard to have children in a time when we're in lockdown. I felt so sorry for kids with graduation in high school. A lot of activities canceled. I admire that you homeschooled, you took your kids to the office with you, you did whatever you needed to do. It's very admirable. And I think a lot of people probably can relate to that story. We all had to make do with things in a different way, didn't we?
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind, and as a result, we're actually putting our kids in a different school because we want to have them have the opportunity to go to school in person. So
yeah, thank you, Kate.
The fall brings.
Nice to talk with you.
Nice to talk with you.
Go ahead, Keith. So most people don't ever think about writing their life philosophy. So I'm going to give you an example of mine and have it be something that you can consider in your life. I'm going to read it to you quickly. I intend to live my life with creativity, courage, and faith. I will be benevolent with others and accepting of their beliefs, while seeking a life filled with happiness, laughter, moral strength, wonderful health, accumulation of wealth, and wisdom while being surrounded with love. Consider writing your own life philosophy. It's something that will guide you as to the things that you're really finding important in your life. And I think that it'll help you set that ship on sail with a clear goal as to where it's going. So we're gonna wrap everything up here. Go ahead and go through them, Keith. We talked about tenacity and how it really is one of those things that will help get you up and get you going each day. We talked about resilience, which is one of those things that will always give you that bounce back factor if you look for it, and all the creativity that can come out of it. We talked about imagination and how you can use it with your clients, and talking about their goals and where they want to go. And we talked about purpose, and really purpose, our purpose in this industry is our clients, isn't it? We're their caretakers. And if you'd use my trip system and engage them in a fashion where they take a trip for a lifetime rather than a trip of a lifetime, using these 4 words through their whole life, they'll suddenly see how they can weather the storm much easier than they thought what they could otherwise. Go ahead, Keith, clean it out. And that's it for today. It's been a pleasure being with you, even virtually. Susan, thank you for contacting me. It's been a blast being with you. I hope you enjoyed my talk.